Seth Ferranti here, your guide through the dark corners of the criminal underworld. As an outlaw filmmaker, author, and journalist, I've delved deep into the minds of gangsters, drug lords, and prison gangs. But my journey doesn't stop there. Let me take you on a thrilling ride as we explore the hidden stories and untold truths that lurk behind the prison walls.
Welcome back to Seth Ferranti's True Crime. Today's episode takes us deep into the streets of Queens, New York. It's the 1980s, the birth of hip-hop, the beginning of the crack era, and the rise of Kenneth Supreme McGriff, leader of the notorious and infamous Supreme team. Nobody played the game like Supreme did. Let's f around and find out.
Reporting out of New York City suggests a dangerous drug is making a comeback. Crack sparked a crime wave in America's largest cities in the 80s and 90s and decimated communities across the country, with many black and brown communities hit the hardest.
This reporting is especially alarming given the crack crisis in the 1980s and 90s. It came along with a giant surge in violent crime. That drove unequal treatment of drug users based largely on race, according to the Justice Department, with an explosion in the black and Latino incarceration rates.
The Peace Gods. What has become known as the Supreme Team was a crew organized in the early 1980s in the vicinity of the Baisley Park Houses, a public housing project in Jamaica, Queens, New York, by a group of teenagers who were members of a quasi-religious sect known as the Five Percenters. The Peace Gods, as they were known for greeting each other with the words "Peace God," evolved into the Supreme Team, becoming a monster crew that dwarfed other drug networks of the era, but they took their cue from the streets. The flashy hustlers of the day set the standard and became role models for the neighborhood, flaunting their alluring lifestyle, which was well beyond the reach of working-class Queens. You see it all in hip-hop, but back then, that was the streets. The working-class neighborhoods of South Jamaica, St. Albans, and Hollis, where the Supreme Team operated their drug enterprise, lie in the 103rd and 113th precincts. Under the leadership of Kenneth Supreme McGriff, with Gerald Prince Miller, his nephew, as second in command, the gang concentrated its criminal efforts on widespread distribution of crack cocaine. Under the red brick towers of Baisley Projects, and around-the-clock crack cocaine trade operating more like a corporation than a drug outfit prospered, selling 25,000 crack vials a week. The Supreme Team's narcotics operation used dozens of employees, including layers of drug sellers, to insulate the gang leaders from the street-level activity, court documents relate. Team members communicated in coded language and numerical systems. To thwart law enforcement efforts further, the team used armed bodyguards and deployed sentinels with two-way radios on rooftops. Supreme was the recognized founder and leader of the Supreme Team. Everything was done under his banner. He is credited with bringing the drug crew into existence and overseeing all of their operations. At his pre-1987 peak, it's said he generated $200,000 daily selling crack and cocaine out of his drug spots at Baisley Projects. There was no freestyling. Either you were down with the team or else.
No dealers, gangsters, hustlers, nobody had the structure that the Supreme Team had. They were one of the most innovative crews during the crack era. They wrote the rules and followed them to a T. Shit, they even called it the game. This is how they stacked cash. This is how they built what was essentially an empire. And Supreme just didn't go out and buy gold watches and fur coats. Yeah, I mean, he did all that shit. That's what hustlers do. But this dude was giving away food. This dude was giving away turkeys on Thanksgiving. This dude was handing out dollar bills. He was like a modern day Robin Hood from the streets of New York.
Supreme led a team that was said to be over 200 deep and rivaled the mafia in structure. The team used a color-coded system for the vials of crack. Each color signified whose cocaine it was. A color for every lieutenant of the organization: yellow, orange, red, and blue. With his team supporting his moves, Supreme's power on the streets of South Jamaica grew. the South Side was gradually coming under the sway of the team. As they became more entrenched in the drug game, dudes got busted, cases would come and go, and they would lose members to the criminal justice system. But their first run was uninterrupted, and during this time they forged their legend in the hood. Supreme came up with the slogan, "No singles, no shorts," which his dealers chanted like a mantra, repeating it to crack customers, meaning no dollar bills and don't come short with the money. It's said Supreme had such an aversion to dollar bills that he used to pass out $3,000 worth of singles a day, every day in Baisley projects. He also had turkey giveaways and funded trips to amusement parks for the kids that lived in the projects. But there was another side to the drug dealing life. Drugs, murder, kidnapping, shootings, more drugs and more murder were the rule of the day. They called it the game, but it was a vicious attempt to come up by any means necessary. In the late 80s, the mindset was, get mine or be mine. And nobody embodied this attitude better than the Supreme team. This was the era from which Supreme and the team emerged. It was a time when men were men, and the consequences of snitching were clear.